Welcome to this explainer. Today, we're going to dive headfirst into the absolutely fascinating and, honestly, sometimes hilarious psychology of how early explorers actually named newly discovered sea creatures. You know, human history is full of grand, sweeping discoveries, but when it came to cataloging the deep blue sea, well, our ancestors took some wildly creative and remarkably literal shortcuts.
Picture this. You're a scientist, a fisherman, or a sailor, centuries ago, peering into the vast, mysterious ocean for the very first time. You face a massive problem. What on earth do you call all these alien things? Imagine sailing into totally uncharted waters and pulling up nets packed with bizarre, wriggling, shell-covered, spiky life forms. There's no encyclopedia you can just flip open. You are the one who has to put a label on these brand new discoveries for everyone back home. So how exactly do you bridge the gap between the terrifyingly foreign deep sea and the world you already understand?
Well, the answer is pretty simple. We borrow from what we know. Human beings naturally make sense of the unknown by comparing it to the familiar world around them. It's actually a deeply ingrained psychological reflex. Instead of inventing an entirely new vocabulary from scratch, early ocean explorers just mapped the terrestrial kingdom straight onto the marine world. They desperately needed to anchor this alien ocean to the comforting, known terrestrial world of their forests and farms. And let me tell you, this strategy resulted in a naming system that is equal parts genius observation and total absurdity.
Section 1. The Uncanny Doppelgangers. Perfect Oceanic Mirrors.
Take the seahorse. With that arched neck, the upright posture, and that elongated snout, comparing it to a land horse was just an absolute no-brainer. Even though one is a galloping mammal and the other is a tiny fish clinging to a piece of kelp, their profiles are undeniably matched. It's like looking in a really weird underwater mirror.
Sometimes the naming convention is incredibly literal. If you literally just swap out the clawed, sturdy feet of a land tortoise for the wide, sweeping flippers of the marine version, the sea turtle is a perfect oceanic twin. They share that unmistakable domed armored shell, the scaly skin, and exactly the same methodical, ancient energy. It is a direct one-to-one translation from the dirt right to the water.
And sometimes, nature just hits copy and paste on a highly successful design. Early namers rightly called out the exactly matching serpentine bodies of the sea snake and the land snake. Their slithering forms, their scales, their coiled postures, they're virtually identical. Whether it's winding its way through desert sands or a vibrant coral reef, a snake is unmistakably a snake, making this one of the most accurate names we're going to look at today.
Okay, so those are the easy ones, right? But what happens when the whole animal doesn't match up? What happens when you're looking at a fish and it definitely doesn't have 4 legs and fur, but instead just one bizarrely specific physical trait stands out and reminds you of a land animal?
Section 2. Sharing standout features. Just one undeniable trait.
Well, it turns out you don't need giant flapping ears or massive ivory tusks to be a sea elephant. Nope, you just need a spectacularly large, fleshy snout. The elephant seal is basically a giant blimp of a marine mammal, but that heavy, drooping proboscis is a dead ringer for the trunk of a magnificent land elephant. That one single feature was enough to lock in the name forever. And what about the sea cat? You probably know it as the catfish. Now, it swims entirely differently than a feline walks, right? It has fins and scales instead of paws. But those undeniably long, sensory barbels protruding from its face mimic feline whiskers so perfectly that the name is just an absolute fit. Again, it's all about spotting that one defining trait. Or consider the sea-parrot, better known as the parrotfish. It earned its name entirely from its robust, bird-like beak. While a land parrot uses its beak to crack open hard nuts and seeds, the sea parrot uses its fused teeth, which literally form an identical beak shape, to scrape tough algae right off of solid coral reefs. It's a completely amazing example of convergent evolution captured beautifully in the naming process. Section 3. The bizarre and beautiful. Questionable pairings. Okay, so comparing a cute, fuzzy little land mouse with ears and a tail to a, oval-shaped, legless, spiky blob takes a very special kind of creative logic. Someone literally looked at this bristly marine worm washing up on a beach, squinted really, really hard, thought it looked kinda like a wet-drowned rodent, and boom, the name sea mouse just stuck. No going back.
In the sea bat, it looks absolutely nothing like a creature of the night. Visually, it looks way more like a flattened pancake than a hanging mammal. Yet its wide, triangular, wing-like fins projecting from its sides give early naturalists just enough of a reason to give it this spooky terrestrial namesake. It really goes to show how a simple silhouette or shadow on the water can completely drive how we categorize nature.
Now talk about an ironic name. On one hand, we have the land hare, alert, incredibly fast, ready to bound away at a moment's notice. On the other, the Sea-Hare, which is a massive, incredibly slow-moving, shell-less sea slug. It only got its name because those two little olfactory tentacles on the top of its head vaguely, and I mean vaguely, look like tall rabbit ears. It is perhaps the slowest creature on Earth, named after one of the fastest.
Fortunately, or maybe unfortunately if you don't like creepy crawlies, this next one is horrifyingly accurate. The sea spider perfectly mimics the terrifying leggy silhouette of its land-dwelling cousin, the land spider. Just looking at those jointed limbs radiating out from that tiny central body on both creatures is enough to send a shiver right down your spine. Whether you're on dry land or walking the ocean floor, that architectural design is instantly recognizable.
We could honestly be here all day because the ocean is literally overflowing with these terrestrial namesakes. We have the barking sea lion, whose roaring calls mimic the king of the jungle. There's the sea dog, commonly known as a dogfish shark. We have the beautifully spotted sea leopard shark mirroring the big cat. And it doesn't even stop there. Explorers name fish after birds and rodents too, giving us the winged sea robin, the wide-eyed sea owl, and get this, even a large-eyed fish called the sea squirrel. The human need to find the familiar never rests.
Section 4. Mythical Ocean Counterparts. Bringing myth to life.
This just brilliantly captures the magic of ocean discovery. When explorers ventured into the freezing Arctic waters and saw a creature with a massive spear protruding straight out of its head, the narwhal's spiraled tusk was so utterly unbelievable they simply dubbed it the sea unicorn. They took a creature of pure myth and realized the ocean was wonderfully weird enough to actually bring it to life beneath the waves.
And that brings us to the absolute most exciting part of this entire topic. Even today, we've barely scratched the surface of our oceans. The vast majority of the deep sea remains completely unexplored by humans, which leaves us with one final, thrilling thought to ponder. What wild, bizarre creature is swimming in the pitch-black dark right now, just waiting for us to finally find it, look at it, and give it a perfectly familiar land name? Thanks for exploring the deep with me in this explainer.